Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and I am the streamer for this stream, and we work on a Django application that I'm building as a side project for my family. It's a homeschool application, but most importantly for you is it's an opportunity to learn about Django as you watch me walk through the process of building it out. Tonight we're going to be working on some pretty block and tackle kind of stuff. Some views and buttons and wiring things together, and just kind of the stuff that needs to be built in order to build out the rest of the application. So before we get into that, I'll let you know a little bit about how you can get in touch with me. I have a website at mattlehman.com where you can sign up for a mailing list. I write a lot about Python. I write a lot about Django. That's a good way to learn about me. I'm also on Twitter as MBLehman. You can find me on YouTube. In case you want to catch a recording, I post all of these videos, all of these streams up there. If you find something useful that you want to refer back to, or you have other questions for me, there is a Discord link down below. So if you have questions that don't fit into a tweet and want to get in touch with me that way, you're welcome to join into the Discord and have a chat there. So that's a bit about me. I guess one final thing, I also have a Patreon page as well. Patreon.com/MBLehman. So if you're really finding this valuable and you want to throw a few dollars my way, I really would be grateful. I'm thankful for the patrons that I do have: Mark, Patrick, Rob, Eric. Thank you very much for contributing. Okay, so let's get into it. Today, we're going to work on view stuff. So you can ask me anything about Python, Django, web development. This is really meant to be a teaching stream, so if there's something you're itching to know, as long as it's in those sort of realms, I'm more than happy to try and answer them. I can't promise an amazing answer, but I will do my best. So the chat's open, just be civil, and we'll have a good time. Today, I'm focused on views, as I said, and so let's talk a little bit about which views. This application that I'm building is a homeschool app. It's for my wife and for my family. We homeschool here, and it's to give her some tools to put out a schedule that my family can follow. My two children have a list of courses that they take. They're both in school. They're both young, and so we want to be able to track what they're working on and mark it off and mark completion and do all of that good stuff. And the more I thought about this over the last week or two, the more I realized there's kind of two main modes for this application. There is the execution mode, where during the school week, the view is going to be primarily focused on let's do school. So here's what's going on for this week. Here's each day and the activities that we need to do. And let's check the things off, get the grades, do all of that kind of stuff. And so that's very focused on the kids doing the work, and then of course my wife as the educator doing the teaching. But there's another aspect of being a teacher, and it's arguably probably a bigger aspect in some ways, and that's the actual planning, the planning of what material are we going to cover, what's the structure of the school year, all of that core stuff. So if you talk to any teachers at any length, especially when they're brand new teachers, they have to put together their course curriculum. So that is very much a part of being a homeschool parent too, is my wife as the person, she's kind of going along with them, teaching them grade after grade. So she always has to be in this mode of planning for the new year and the new courses. And so that's the other view of the system. So we've already done a lot of the work for the execution side, where it's like, here's the data, it's already in here, here's how to present it so that it is useful for the system, or for not the system, for her as an educator to be able to do the work on the app. But we have to move and switch our attention to the other side of this, where now it's time to get the data in there. And how is the data going to be structured in a way so that she can quickly add to courses, add tasks, add grade levels, everything that she needs to do to manage her school year, and do that in a nice and pleasant way. So I've been thinking about that particular aspect, and I've already made a couple of changes in how I think this would be approached. If you've joined me on previous streams and were really observant, I don't expect most of you to be as observant as I'm about to comment, but this used to be called courses. And it's a pretty, it was and still is right at this moment, a pretty mundane looking page. And this is the page, only slightly modified from its original incarnation. And all it had on it, it used to have even less than this. It used to have the word courses, and then it would list out these courses. And I realized that that was sort of a crummy way to approach the world. As I started to think about, like, if I was putting myself in my wife's shoes and imagining the next school year, for example, how would she want to do that? How would you build out a school year, an entire curriculum for the year? And what tools would you like at your disposal? And so what I kept coming back to is everything centers around the school year itself. Courses are really just a facet within the school year. So it's the model hierarchy that I've shown quite a few times, and I can bring up the diagram just for the sake of seeing it as a visual here, is we've got this architecture diagram of my Django models, and the school is the topmost thing, and the school year is the thing below that, and it's sort of a tree. And so underneath the school year are a couple of grade levels, and grade levels can have many courses, and then the courses have a bunch of tasks, and that is how work is generally structured. So her flow as an educator for building this out would be, how do I create a school year to start? How do I add grade levels to that? How do I add courses to that? And then get this holistic view of everything that the school year contains. And so I've switched this to be from courses as this like kind of low level part of that whole structure to this holistic view of the school year is the thing. The school year is the core focus of everything else. And the execution mode is just sort of being driven by all the content that is plugged into the school year and all of its related models. So that's where we're at. And what I wanted to do from there is take this school year page and flesh it out and make it really robust. So make it include the information that she cares about. Make it include the ability to add new things, new grade levels, to add new courses, to quickly modify existing courses. All of that needs to live on this school year page. And then, when it comes time to get down into the details of each course, then we'll finally go off into a different page that, that I can show actually. So this page where she's adding what's in the course, that is something that is separate, is more a focused task, but is not really part of the overall structure and layout of the school year. So I know last week we worked on adding PyTest as the test framework. That was very much an infrastructure kind of change and had nothing to do with the actual presentation of the site. But this time we're going to get right into the views. And I think a lot of my plan is to flesh this out, to change this view, to make it more useful, and add the buttons that I think are going to be needed, surface some of the data that is present in the models that's not currently present, and kind of just work on this and make it a useful hub for the application. So that's what we're working on. If you have questions, drop them in the chat. I'm happy to try and answer them because I don't expect you to know about how I've modeled this already, and we can surface that data as it comes up. But the first thing I want to do, I guess, is get into this view and probably begin by augmenting it with the data about the school year, and then a couple of buttons that are going to be critical for this particular school year, and then we'll kind of keep moving down. So this may actually span a few streams in order to get this right, in order to get a holistic view here, but that's how we'll start. So you can see that I've already got this basic template, and the template is, well, hold on, sorry. I was doing this on a view where I had more real estate, but don't have that anymore. So this is the whole template right now. And frankly, here's the entire view. It's a detail view. It's using a Django detail view, and it's got a login is required because that's the nature of this application. There's nothing useful you can do unless you are a logged in user. And there's a few things that I am pulling already. So we're doing a filter on the school year model, and we're prefetching the grade levels and we're prefetching the courses. That's what's going to enable us to have this view have enough information to be detailed. But you can see that Django's really, frankly, doing a ton of work for us already. It's all present here. I had to do a little bit of wiring to get it to go to the right fields, but there's not too much to really add to this. To close the loop for you, in case you're kind of new to Django, this is the URL file that actually does the routing and maps the view, which is the code that executes, to the path that we see. So currently, I am on this kind of long path of schools, school years, and then some UUID, and that's the end. So we're looking at a specific school year right now, and that's just the way that this is working at the moment. Ultimately, when a user clicks this button, I want it to be for the current school year. So there's this notion of what is today, and from today we should be able to look up which school year is active right now and then send them to the right detail page. But that's the next step down the road. So I want to get this page right, and then we can add that extra linkage if we get that time, and then go from there. So we've got the view. I don't expect to be changing much about this view tonight. We might be working on the template for quite a while, and we're definitely not changing the URL. So let's ditch that. And just to give ourselves more space, let's go ahead and close the view files too, because it's already got all the data in the context that's loaded. Before carrying on though, I'm going to kill the local server, and I'm going to put it in. I'm going to put the debug toolbar in there so that we can use that as a tool to inspect things. So if you're new to Django, the debug toolbar, at least if you're doing a server-side rendered application, which I strongly recommend you do, is a fantastic way to learn about your view. I've just refreshed the page. You may not have even noticed, but this thing over here appeared, and it's DJDT, which is the Django debug toolbar. It's kind of a mouthful. But if you expand that, it gives you all of these things that you can discover about the view, to see what's there. So let's take a quick tour of it. We've got this templates area, which is the template that we're rendering. And what we care about in this context is the context. And the context is all of the data. So it doesn't look like there's a lot of context here, but the key things that have been added are the object and school year, or they're the same thing. They've been, object is in case you want to just use a generic name on all of your pages. School year is attached to whatever type of model instance you're creating. So I'm going to use school year in my template, and all of the other data that we prefetched using the prefetch related, the grade levels and the courses, I'll need to access them all through the school year record. So we can see how that's done in the template. So if we look at this, we can see that I'm rendering the title, and I'm using the string representation of school year, which is what's showing the 2020. And then we've got this box, and we're basically just looping through this stuff for now. And this is where we're going to add more, because I don't think this is fully appropriate. So I'm using Tailwind CSS to do all of my styling, which is why there's a bunch of classes here. So it's using a flex box, and it's doing columns or I guess it's doing rows actually, for all of this content. And then it's starting to loop through the grade levels, and each grade level is given a box, if I get that right. So we can inspect this stuff and see how the flex box is laying out here. So here's our whole area, and here's the first column for the grade level, and then there's individual boxes for making it a column. But this is kind of the really, really rough version of this style. That's not what I'm going for. I wish I had a mockup to show you. I'm not really good with mockup tools, so I'll try to describe the vision that I have for this page. Hierarchically, it's okay. It does do the representation of here's the top thing. It's the school year. Grade level is the next element, although it's the sizing is such that you wouldn't be able to tell very well. I mean, you can see second grade and kindergarten and deduce it a little bit, but there's not enough visual separation really to make that really clear. And then here's the list of course. So that's the 3 tiers of what we got here. So what I want to do is follow that down. So at each level of this, we want to show some information about it, give the actual actions to take, and then move down to the next layer. So the school year, for instance, will show which days of the week a standard school week will run on. That's part of the requirements for the school year. So maybe you have a school year where your kids are only doing school 4 days a week, or maybe you're a crazy person and you're doing 7 days a week. That's configurable because different families will have different needs. So I want to be able to say school year for 2020 runs on, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and so on. So I want to put the data there, and then structurally I want to add the actions, the things that you can do after the data. So the 2 actions for a school year is editing attributes about the school year, and then creating grade levels, which are child elements that live under the school year, which then leads us to the grade level section. And the grade level section will similarly have a little bit of, I guess it doesn't really have data, but it will have a couple buttons. So it'll have a button to add a course, and it will have a button to, I guess it needs a button to edit the grade in case you got the name of the grade wrong. So we'll have matching stuff between the school year and grade. And then I want to change these labels right now. Like right now, these are links and they're fine. They were functional in order to get something up and running that I could show my spouse. But they don't look good. I don't know how you feel about them, but I think they don't look good. So what I'm hoping to change them to is something more meaningful. I'm thinking like a little card probably, and the card will have the name of the course, and inside the card there will be a little bit of detail about, again, what days it runs on, because a course might run only for certain days of a school week. For instance, maybe this is PE. We don't do PE every day in my house. So special activities might run just like once a week for like soccer or dance or whatever. And so those will be listed separately from the school years. But there also needs to be a button to edit that course, which will take you to that other page that we just saw that includes all of the tasks and all of that stuff. So that's the rough outline that I have in my head of how I want this to look. And now it's about putting in the pieces to do that. So let's get in there. So the first thing that I want is to put in the data about the school year. And I'm trying to decide if I want to put it in this big flex box or if it should belong out of there. I don't see any real reason to put it in the flex box, I guess. I mean, I might not even have the flex box in the long run if I change the layout entirely, because the grid, the layout will probably be the grade level itself will be its own like flex box thing, I would imagine. But I guess it does give the current flex box here it's using a width of full. So yeah, let's not bother with the flex box. Let's just, for now, let's put some paragraph tags so that we can see something. So I'm just going to start going. Let's say, we'll just say runs on, and let's figure out the layout that we want this to have. So I'm going to type this in synthetically so I can see it, which is something that I like to do. And then once I have a style, then we can actually change the code to make it support that. So I know that in my household, a standard school year will run on Monday through Friday. And so we want something along those lines. So now if I refresh this, that's okay. It's a little clunky at the moment. So right out of the bat, that's not right. Out of the gate or off the bat, combining expressions. Right out of the gate, it seems to me like this style is too close to the school year heading. It's grabbing your attention too much. This is kind of meant to be It's important information, but it's definitely secondary to the structure. So I'll probably want to tone down the font and likely the color as well to make it less visually impacting. So we can try and tweak that. And this is where we get to see the power of Tailwind. Tailwind, if I can remember all the classes, has some really nice ability to quickly modify these things. So we can say something like font thin as the class, and I'm not modifying a CSS file here. I'm just modifying an HTML file, and it immediately drops that down to something much nicer. I still think that's too big and too close, so we'll tweak those. The other thing that I'm going to do is at the moment we don't actually need the debug toolbar, and it's slowing things down. That is a side effect of the debug toolbar I've noticed over the years, is that when it's running, it can have quite a significant performance impact on your local server. So I'm going to try running it without that and see if we can get this get these responses a little faster. So let's what should we do next? Let's make there a little bit more space under the school year, and we'll do that by setting a margin on the bottom. So let's say MB4. Let's see how that looks. Well, I'll leave it for now. It could be once we get the big elements in there that then we'll do some big size adjustment, because I think what's going to happen is if I tweak this right now to try and get it perfect, and then I put other stuff in it, it's probably going to throw everything out of whack. So this number is good enough. We've got font thin. Let's change it to text small. Is that going to look okay? It's a little tiny. What are the other? The other thing we're going to need is the actual Tailwind, because even though Tailwind is amazing, I don't use it all the time. So sometimes I forget the actual CSS classes that are available. Small. All right. So text small. I would imagine we're already on text base. So that was probably what we had before. No, actually it didn't seem to be. Okay, let's keep it there. And I think just looking at it, changing the font to font thin reduced the weight of it all, so that I don't know that I need to drop the color of the text to be like a gray, because the other thing we could do, I mean, we could take a look at it, see how it looks. But if we do like a dark gray, like text gray 700, it does have some impact. Like if I really went extreme with it, this is like where you get a bad accessibility score. If you're using Chrome tools or DevTools has some ability to measure your legibility, don't do this. So we have to be careful with how much we apply on changing text colors, because you want things to be accessible. But at the same time, one thing you learn from, I've taken a bunch of design courses online. I'm not like a design person, but I have learned that people's eyes aren't used to seeing hard black. Like when you see like black, 000 in RGB space, your eyes notice that. And so by pulling it down to a gray of some kind, it does give it a more natural feel. So I do play around with using grays in the really dark gray side to make stuff legible, but just give it a hint of feeling that gives it some warmth, I guess. So we've got this thing that says it runs on these days. And trying to decide if it should run on the plural or not. No, let's not do that, because it could say Mondays, Tuesday, like if your school year spans multiple, but I think that's going to be overkill. So I need to now make this code real for that particular piece of data. So a school year, that's where we're going to need to jump into some code before we can do this. Because what I really want to say is something like, I don't know, what would I call this thing? It would be something like school year and display days or something like that. That's what I'm going to want to use in the template, which then will pull the data out from the model that actually keeps track of the days and format it in a nice way and all of that jazz. I don't have that attribute yet, so we're going to have to code that in there. So let's go over to the model where this would be. And the model itself is in schools. There's a school year model, but we're not going to put the method on the school year because the school year is actually inheriting from an abstract base model. And that model is where the day logic comes in. And I didn't need to, but I chose to make an abstract model here because courses has the exact same concept of what days do you run on. So I chose to put it in an abstract model, and that kind of mixes in the behavior so that the school year can benefit from that feature of the ability to do days of the week without having to plug that logic right into this model itself. So the proper place to do this is going to be on the core models where I've defined this thing. And I'm not going to go into a deep explanation of how I modeled this in the actual code. I've done this on previous streams. Suffice it to say, I'm doing bit masking with an integer to model the different days. So if that made sense to you, cool. If not, don't worry about it. What we need to do is actually write this little display days property, and that should be the right thing. So I'm going to come down here, and we've got these getters. Hey, Goops Boy, hello. How are you doing? Are you new to Django, or are you a Django pro? Just curious. So we've got these getter functions here, and this one's kind of related to different dates. Well, I guess a lot of these are, this is all about dates, so maybe it doesn't really matter. Let's just plop it here. So we'll say display days is the name of the thing that we want. And I'm going to eventually do some tests for this, but I'm going to hack up a version that I think will work. And then we can backfill with some tests. That's an approach that I'd sometimes take because sometimes you just want to get the code going. Cool. 1 month of Django. That's more than a lot of people can say. So welcome. Hope you can learn something. If you have any questions, let me know. Happy to try and answer. So display the weekdays in, well, maybe just display the weekdays. That seems reasonable. And so we've got this days of the week attribute that's going to be on here. And that's where the actual data is stored. And so I need to find a way to get out the particular days. So, I've got a runs on feature here. And so I think the way I'm going to do this probably is this days of the week. I always start my week from Monday. That's just I could have chosen to have the week in this application start from a Sunday and do Sunday to Saturday, but I chose Monday to Sunday. Just the choice I made. It's how the application is going to be represented. So I think what I'm going to do here is say when this thing runs, we're going to run over this this week, and just kind of like here. Well, maybe I already have a method that basically supports what I need to do. Now it's going to be similar to this logic. So we're going to say for day in self week. Then what I'm going to do is check if the school year is running on that day, like this. So if self runs on day. So if Monday is selected and if it's parsed out of this data, then we want to add that day. And so we'll say, and there really should be like a method just to pull running days or something like that. So I might do a little refactor after this is over to get like the running days, because I'm kind of embedding the logic that could be used in a bunch of places into this display method, and that doesn't really feel right. But it's a start. So let's get the method working, and then we'll refactor to, I think, what's going to be a cleaner and more reusable chunk. So we'll say running, just reading your message here. Oh, doing JS on the front end. That's good luck. So I'm not knocking your choice. That is entirely within your right to do that. What I have found in my experience, and this is speaking from like, this is not hypothetical. This is speaking from personal experience where I did this. I didn't use Angular. I used Ember in my case. I started an app and made Django like the API, and made a client-side app for it. And what happened to me was that I ended up doing a lot of double work. In the JavaScript, I was doing a bunch of work to replicate what I needed in the backend. Like I needed similar models, so I needed a client-side representation, I needed a backend representation. So I spent a lot of time doing that, which, it's fine. I don't know if you're on a team or not, but that was what I encountered when I did that, and it was trying. Okay, so but getting back to the method here, what I've done here is say I'm putting together a list of all of the days that the school year runs on. And now that I have the list, what I'm going to do is join the list together. Well, I need to get like a textual representation of each date. So I need to think about how to do that for a minute. And once I have the text representation of the date, then what I'll do is do a join on it, which will join with commas. And I'm going to throw in an and in there. If there's two, we won't need the comma. So this will get there'll be some boundary conditions that we'll need to check out. But this will be the general idea. So, because what's coming back from here, these days of the week are actually these constants. And as you can see, each one of these corresponds to a number. So this is like getting real hairy real fast. There's probably clean ways to use some library to get out the actual day name properly. I'm not going to do that. Instead, what I'm going to do is make a new dictionary that has my constants up here, which are specific to my app. There are these numbers, and I'm going to use those as the keys. And then we'll get the display value will be on the other side. And so we'll be able to look up a little lookup table like this. And don't worry about what this other lookup table is doing. So lookup table to get displayable name. And there's totally ways you can, like if I had passed this into a Python date object, I could definitely get out a nice displayable name, and Django would give me tools to do that. But I don't want to create date instances just to put this together. So a really basic dictionary will totally suffice for what we need. So we'll say day to display day. I don't know. That's okay. And we'll have Monday, and that'll be Monday. And this part's going to be boring, but whatever. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and one more. Sunday. And hopefully I spelled them all right, because wouldn't that be egg on my face if I decided to go this, it's not a cheater's path, but if I decided to go this route and then got it wrong, that would be embarrassing. Thankfully, I think I can, I would have screwed it up right there. Okay, so now we've got this like display version, and then we can take, we can say like display days, and we'll say, what should we say? So this will be a list comprehension, and what we'll do is say self day to display day, and we'll say day for day in running days. And I just noticed that I named those variables wrong, which is why my editor's angry at me. Okay, so if you've been following me so far, what should be in this list now is a list of every day that the school year runs on, and it should be the text versions of that. And so the final thing that we're going to do, well, there's two different paths here. If there are 2 days, I want to do this like properly so that this doesn't look weird if you only have a school year that runs on a couple days. So there are probably at least 3 cases to consider. There's the case where there's only 1 day. There's the case where there's 2 days. And then there's the case where you have more than 2 days. So we've got, this will just show like Monday. If your school year only runs on 1 day, that's what you got. If you've got 2 days, you'll have Monday and Tuesday. And then if you've got more than 2 days, that's when we bring in the commas. It'll be Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And I'm a fan of the Oxford comma, so that's what we're doing. We're going to put an Oxford comma in there. So so let's code this up in that version. Why not? So we'll say we're going to use this multiple times, so we'll store the length. We'll say day count is the length of the display days. And then we'll say if day count equal 1, then we want to return just the day. We want to return display days of 0, right? And then, so then we want to come into here and say elif day count equal 2. Then we want to return a join, and then we want to join on the word and. So let's do, this might look a little weird, but this is kind of Python for you. So we'll get that as the display days. And then finally, we have this last case where I'm missing a case. This would get me caught in an interview. There's the 0 day. Well, annoying. So if there's 0 days, it should just be nothing. It should be an empty string. Good question. What do I prefer as a JS framework? If I had, so right now my app doesn't have any JS in it. I'm doing all server-side. Any action I've chosen for the time being to do a new page. I find that to be really fast to get going. And it keeps the like cognitive load of switching between Python and JavaScript down. So my optimal answer is nothing. If I had to add JavaScript to this app, which I imagine I'll have to do someday, I will probably look for something light. I'm definitely not going to go all in on a full single page application. I say definitely. There's always the possibility. It's highly unlikely that I'll go in on a full page, single page application. Just because for the reasons I just mentioned, that as a one person team, like that's a lot of overhead for me to do that. So I would probably lean for something that can add sprinkles of JavaScript, little components that I could put in where I need dynamic behavior. So my natural instinct is to lean towards something like Vue.js, because I hear that it's pretty good for that. I've used it to some level on past teams, but it was more when I was a technical lead and I had JavaScript people working like with me and for me. So they were doing a lot of the heavy lifting on the JavaScript stuff. And I kind of saw it in PR reviews, but I wasn't banging on it in earnest myself. So I'm not like a Vue.js pro by any stretch of the imagination. But what I did see about it, I liked, because it sounded like you could have a pretty light integration to start of, here's my component. I'm just sort of adding it into the mix right now. And then as you need to grow more dynamic functionality, you can move up to that. That would be my first impression. So hopefully that gives you an answer. So let's add the extra case here. And I guess I need to put this below. And this will become an elif. What I don't like about the ordering, so I might reorder this, but because I think what's going to naturally happen is these other cases will rarely happen. So in fact, let's do that. Let's say I believe the most likely case that anyone would have happen, and for now, since my customer base is only going to be a single person, and that's my spouse, I know for a fact that my only user is going to have this be a 5-day a week kind of school year. So I'm just going to put this at the top and we'll order it that way. So we're really going to do this else case that doesn't exist yet. It's going to come to the top. So we'll say if the day count is greater than 2, and everything else can fall through that. So for the moment, I haven't finished that code, so we'll do this, and then we can rework this. So the rest of these probabilities really don't matter. So we can let's do it kind of descending, I guess, just to give some sort of consistency at all. So we'll say, and then that would give us this last case here. So let's reorder the comments as well, because I think those are useful. Because I'm going to definitely come back in here in the future and be like, what the heck is this method doing? And this just gives us a structure to see this whole thing. All right, cool. So we've got the 0 case done, the 1 case done, the 2, and now we need to work about this case where we have more than 2. And to do that, I'm going to say, I'm going to change. I know that I want to insert an and, so we'll say that the display days, the last day, so I'm going to get to that last day by using a -1 index. I want that to equal, well, what do I want it to equal? I want it to equal and like this with the same display day. -1 again there. Okay, and so that tweaks, like this is all meant to be, this whole entire list is totally for the purpose of creating it and displaying it, and that's it. So I don't feel bad modifying this data in place. Like that doesn't give me any qualm at all. So the other thing we need to do is then join all of the display days together into the final output. And so we want to say comma space, because if we just did comma, it would not give any space. And then we'll join on display days. Okay, so we've hacked it together. And you can see like there's a pretty clear separation of what's going to become a separate method. Like this chunk of code of running days, there's no reason to have this be in the display days. But I think that we now have enough that I can plug this into the template that we had from earlier and see how it came out. And if it looks okay, then we'll write a couple of tests for it and yeah, declare victory and move on to the next thing. So we've got that. Let's go back to our template file and we'll change this runs on stuff. So change to the comma or to the closing tag, and we'll say school year dot display days. Okay, and if any luck, this should be exactly the same as what it was before. Hey, look at that. It looks exactly like we want it to. And for fun, let's poke at it with some different display days. So right now it's a 31. So a single day would be like, don't worry about this part. These are just the numbers. So this will just be one day. So that should be like Monday, I think. So we've got the 1 day scenario. And we'll change it to the no days, which should be empty. Okay. And then we'll change it to 2 days. I'm doing bit masking, so that's how I know what's going on. All of them follow all of our cases. So I think we got them all. But let's put it back to where it was. It was at 31, which is a bit mask that accounts for Monday through Friday. Okay. So we've got that data, and let's look at the model really quickly. I don't think there's anything else that I want to display out of here. Oh, no, I'm wrong. So this thing currently says that it's the school year for 2020, but I totally think it should say that this is, starts on such and such date, ends on such and such date, and runs on this stuff. So we need to use the start date and end date. And outside of that from the model, like we don't need the foreign key to the school, and the users aren't going to care about the ID. And then the days of the week thing is we just did that using that display date thing. So let's come back to our template. And what are we going to change? We'll say, I kind of made this meant to be like a little blurbs of data, but maybe a sentence might look better. Let's try it. So this school year starts on January 1, 2020 and ends on December 31st, 2020 with what will be the right sentence for this? School year starts on these days. I don't know. Let's keep it as runs for now until I come up with something better. And runs on that. How does that look? Blah. Okay. Well, it's functional, but it looks like garbage because it's spanning the whole distance and it's just this one big sentence. Okay, let's try and break it up into two then. And let's see how it goes. So delete to runs. Let's put it back on in this style. And we'll just end it at the 2020. Delete to the closing tag, put in a period. We'll have two sentences there. How does that look? It's better. It still looks a little weird because there's no margin. But again, I'm not going to fret too much about the margin yet because we haven't put all of this together. I don't know. I'm not feeling that great about this because I think what's happening to me is, or visually what's happening to me is it's better, but it's not, it's better with an asterisk. I'm losing the distinction between what is the dynamic data and what is actually like just copy. And sometimes it's sometimes kind of nice when you have this experience where you have a very personalized set of documentation. For example, I don't know if you've ever used Stripe for doing charging on an app, but their developer documentation is amazing. And their developer documentation can take into account your account. So I think they've even gone so far as in code snippets, they'll put in your developer key to show you in the example, copy and paste this code. And I find that to be a really awesome experience. It's very contextual. It's very aware of what you're doing. So that's cool. At the same time, sometimes you want to highlight it a little bit to boom, this is your data. This is not just, so to make sure you read this, don't ignore this. So I think what I want to try and do is let's put a strong tags around the dates for a moment. That might help. I don't know. We're just experimenting. So to kind of bring the visual attention to that. So I think that helps. And then maybe what if I change all of the entire set of run dates to be strong as well? I don't know if that might be too much, but we'll try. Yeah, that feels okay. So I think what this does, the other thing I could have done is flip this around so that I could have runs on be bold and then the actual user's data be plain. But by making this a sentence above, that doesn't feel right. And the other way I can get around that is breaking this up so it's not a sentence and say be very, very engineering and say start date, blah, end date, blah. But that just doesn't feel good to me. I want this to feel organic, feel like somebody actually made it and thought about it and not just some engineer slapping in here's your data, go look at it. Because I know that I fall into that temptation sometimes to be here's your data, go look at it. So I'm going to keep it as the bold, the way we have it there. And I think the only thing we need to do now is use some formatting stuff to actually pull this out and make it actually, mean something. In order to do that, we're going to use a Django template tag, and I'm drawing a blank on which one. So you can, this is good to know, if you do a search for Django template tags, I think built-in template tags is what we want to search for. So I'm searching for Django built-in template tags, which will take you right to the documentation showing all of the built-in template tags. Template tags and filters are bits of Python code that you can pass your variables and stuff into. So when the template is server-side rendered, it will be dynamically changed. And so the tag that we want to use is the date tag, I believe. So, and it's not really a tag, it's actually a filter, but you'll see how it works in just a second. So let's change this first one, for example. So let's change everything inside the tag, and we're going to put in school year. And we'll start by just doing start date, so you can see what that looks like. We come back over to the app. Where'd we go? And replace it. This actually looks okay already. So maybe we don't want to do this. Although I think I want the full spelled out month, but that's not bad. It's doing the month abbreviation with a dot, and we'll do the same thing with the other tag. So let's change inside of that tag, and we'll say school year, end date, and that gets us a lot of the way there. I did like it with the full month spelled out, so this is where the date tag comes in. So if you don't like the default format, you can always change it, and we can change it by using a filter, and the filter is done with a pipe character after the context variable. And in this case, the filter that we want to use is called date. And the date filter takes, well, all filters, if you want to pass in parameters, they'll take a string. And the string in this case is the format string that we want to use to represent the final output. And so the documentation for this shows exactly the way you can represent this. And so what I want is I want to use the full month name. So I want capital F, so F, and then I want the date, excuse me. Those are times. I might already go by it. There it is. I want the day of the month without the leading 0, so that looks like J. So F, J, and then I want the final thing to be the full year, capital Y. So F, J, Y. And we'll take this chunk of code and I will copy it, and we'll go to end date, and we'll put it there. And if I did that right, we should get the full thing spelled out the way I had it before. So that's one of the things I like about server-side templates is Django's already giving you all these really cool tools that are built in that you could use something in JavaScript like Moment.js or something to do formatting of dates. But if you can avoid all that, you can get some pretty nice stuff out of a server-side template. All right, I think it's time to throw some buttons in there. We need 2 buttons. First button is going to be about adding the, what's it going to be about? It's going to be about editing the course or the school year. And the second button that will go next to it will be for adding a new grade level, I think. So what I want to do is come back to this page over here. So it's basically like, it's going to look like this, it's going to look very close to this layout here. Although now that I'm looking at this, I realize that I have conceptually put that backwards compared to what I have here. I wonder if I should stick with that. Because when I designed this page, the purpose of this page was like, you're not going to be using this. The user will rarely need to edit the course, because editing the course has, changed the days that it runs on, changed the name of the class. When the school year is running, that's just not something that will come up very often. However, what will come up often, all the time in fact, will be the need to add new tasks to this. Especially if my wife is like not done planning the full course by the year, she could be at the bottom every day adding a new task. And so this button will add one to the very end. And so she needs that ability. We're in a little bit of a different scenario here where I don't imagine I don't imagine that she would add grade levels all the time or edit the school year all the time. Like both of those things are going to be fairly static once the school year is going. However, just to bring in like the consistency with that other page, I think what I'll do is have an add grade level button first, and then edit school year be the second button. And the style that I'm using for buttons is all caps for each word, so we'll follow suit there. In fact, I think let's steal that button row from the course thing and then fill it in with our own stuff. So we'll go to the course template. It's going to be templates, courses. Yeah, I'm going to add delete options too. That's a good point. Thank you. In fact, I've got like GitHub issues for all of this, and I named some. This is all part of a GitHub milestone that I just created like 2 nights ago, and I called it CRUD-tastic. And if y'all know what CRUD means? So CRUD is a common thing you'll see in web apps. It stands for create, read, update, and delete, which are like the main operations that most web applications will actually need. If you really start and think about it, almost every application that you'll interact with, you could call every single page that you visit some sort of variant of one of these 4. Not always true, but a lot of applications are designed with this model in mind. So you're right, Goops Boy, that I do need delete stuff eventually, but I'm putting that off to last because the application is like brand new, and what's going to be needed first out of the gate is the ability to add stuff to it. And so in terms of like prioritizing of how do I get the minimum viable product out there that actually allows my spouse to create stuff, I need create pages, and I need the ability to read pages, and I need updates if she makes a mistake. So even the updates are kind of a lower priority thing. So it's get create first so that she can get content in there, and then expand out from there. So I would almost even read this as like the order that you should implement things if you're building on an app yourself, as a good way to, like, if you're truly trying to be minimal in what you're building, doing create first and then read and then update is like and then finally delete is a good path for the stuff that you need. So there's my thoughts there. But I will ultimately have that, so that's a good point, good call out. Okay, so let's come to the course detail page, which is where those buttons exist, and it looks like I have them as just part of a paragraph tag with a couple of links in there. We can throw those in this other template. Put it here, and this will fail right now. So if I do a refresh, we'll see it fail. Boom. And it failed because I'm trying to do a URL call, but I'm passing it data that doesn't exist as part of the template now. And it's happening here. This course is not part of the context, so it doesn't know what to build here. And then same thing here, this edit page. So this part right now is just junk. So what I'm going to do is just clear that out and put in just pure placeholder stuff at the moment, and then we'll come back and add the URL things later. So we need to add a grade level is one button, and edit the school year is the other button. And I have a feeling we're going to need padding below this. So let's say, again, let's just use MB2 for the moment. Ooh, too tight. 4. Nope, I don't like it. 8. Okay. When I was reading, taking like Lynda design courses and stuff, a common thing that I saw, and in fact I'm even noticing there's probably some problems here, between the distance between these two buttons is really tight. Give everything more space when you're building your applications. Like people, and this might be a more of a Western culture thing, actually, but the designers I've seen like to let stuff breathe. Although curiously, like I've seen, admittedly, I don't speak, Japanese or Chinese or anything like that, but I've seen pictures of sites built for more Eastern cultures, and in contrast, those websites seem to be very tightly packed, to like increase the data per square inch. I don't know, square centimeter, I guess, because of where they are. So it's all cultural, right? But at least in Western applications that I've seen, let stuff breathe. Oh, you're an industrial engineer. Okay, that's cool. I know nothing about industrial engineering. That's interesting. I think that makes for some really interesting software developers, actually. So I don't know if it sounds like you're a newbie to web dev and Django and stuff. I don't know if you're also new to Python, but there's a good website or a good podcast that I recommend. It's called Talk Python, and it's put together by a guy named Michael Kennedy, and he does like interviews with people in the Python community. But one of his big things that he likes to talk about, and something I agree with him on, is that Python is this like huge language, right? And it gets used by data scientists. It gets used by industrial engineers, I presume. Like all sorts of people use it. And I think that's actually it's kind of cool about the language is that you don't have to call yourself a computer scientist or a computer engineer to also be a programmer. You could be an industrial engineer who happens to be programming to complete some project. So I think that's really neat. So good on you for doing industrial engineering. That's awesome. And check out the podcast. It's worth listening to, in my opinion. Oh, cool. I don't even know what Garobi is. Very neat. Okay, so let's think about where we are. So I hope at this point, I mean, you can see that sometimes these pages, they don't come together quickly. And admittedly, like I am doing a stream right now, so I'm not operating at full speed, heads down, just banging out code. I'm trying to explain what I'm doing as I'm doing it. But even then, the pages can take a while to take shape. And so we've got the top of the page. This is feeling pretty good. It's kind of Spartan. It doesn't have a lot of visual flair, but I don't know how much visual flair I need to add to this application. So the next thing that we're going to do, and I don't know how deep I want to get into it because it'll be kind of a lot of the same stuff. We'll be getting down to displaying this next section. So I'm gonna blow apart this column approach because I don't think I like it, and have each grade level be like a big bar. And so I've got two children. My eldest, or my elder, is he's in second grade, and so he's got a bit more courses. But what I want to do is have a UI that displays each of the courses in little boxes until it fills up. And then I want to break and have a gap and then show the next grade level. And I think that's going to work because there's another facet of this that is true, and it's more specific to this particular domain. If my project succeeds and I get other people using it, I've only got 2 kids. That's how it is in my household. That's how I think it will always be. But I do know that in a lot of homeschool families, it's very common to have a lot more than 2 kids. I don't know that that's universally true. I can't speak for all homeschool families, of course. But in the communities that I know of, these families tend to be larger. And you can see how on this constrained screen real estate, I can comfortably get one course, two course, definitely a third would fit in here. But if you have a fourth or a fifth, like what is that going to mean? I guess it would mean a wrapping, but then I don't know. I just feel like there's the layout does not suit the user demographic for who would be best suited for this application. So my thought process here is just embrace the fact. Hey, congratulations, True Cooper. Were you the one giving yourself such a hard time about like you thought you were gonna fail? Well, if that was you, congrats. That's awesome, man. So yeah, students weed themselves out. So you can get in your head. But I knew if you gave it a try, you would get it as long as you stuck with it. But 4.0, that's really cool. So the hope for this is to like put these in rows so that each grade is like just logically grouped together. So whether you have 2 kids or whether you have 4 kids, it's just like it'll feel like, ooh, these are all my grades, just kind of stacked on top. That just seemed like the right flow. So Drew, remind me, are you Drew Cooper's son? Are you Drew Cooper? I don't. You leave that to yourself. I don't need all those personal data. Are you going to be a sophomore coming up, or did you finish like your freshman year? Or I don't know where you are in the world, so maybe that doesn't even make sense. But that's how I think about colleges in the U.S. anyway. So the next thing we can do is let's try and block out this grade level area. And maybe that's going to be where we stop probably for the night. So I want to get the grade levels structured so that each one goes in a column. And that's kind of different from what's here. Each one is like going in effectively, if you imagine this as to being one gigantic row, and this is in the first cell in the row, and this is the second cell. That doesn't make sense. It's just going to be easier to just do this, and then you all can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so we have our box here, and as a reminder, we inspect the page. This is our flex. So it's already set in a flex row. But I think what I actually want is I want this to be a column. So I think that might be the simple change, is to change this. And you might be confused, or you might not know Tailwind enough to know what the heck I'm talking about. The way Tailwind works is it's designed to be mobile first. So even though it's got this flex call here, which means use the flex column layout, what overrides is like this small SM colon qualifier means that over a certain screen size, everything over the small screen size will actually switch to this other layout. So I switched to a row layout on bigger screen sizes, but that's not actually what I'm going to want. So let's change this to always be a column. So it might be just as simple as deleting the row. And so that gives the thing that I want, the effect. Then we need to fix the stuff inside of the actual element. So we've got the flex box is now stacking appropriately. Honestly, we don't even probably need Flexbox for that, but that's okay. And now we need to move into this next area. So I think the way that this worked is I've got this div for each. How is this working? We've got a div class for the grade level. Okay, I think that's this box around here. Okay, I don't want this anymore. So I think what I want to do is ditch, maybe not the div itself, that might be useful, but the classes that are there, because we want this to expand, have the opportunity to expand the entire distance. So I don't think we need width full because it's going to inherit width full from the thing above it. As soon as it refreshes, come on. Okay, so noticeably there wasn't really a change there yet. However, you can see it now. Now that we're here, you can see that from the browser's point of view, there is a change. We're no longer constraining to a max size. We now have all of this space. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is put the courses into a Flexbox. So let's do that. Let's do div class equal flex, and we'll say this is where I want it to be a flex row. Okay. And we'll close the div and take all that in by one indent. Okay, so if I did this right, it should now start going that way from your point of view. Because it should like stack these. Yeah. Looks terrible, but it's doing the right thing so far. So it's fitting all of these into one space because we didn't give it any like specific sizing. And so rather than trying to overflow or wrap or do any of those sort of things, it just says, oh man, I can cram this all in here and here you go. So that's not right. That's not what we want, what I want. What I do want is for all of these things to fit inside of a grid. So if we look over at Tailwind again, and we go to width attributes, you can see that that Tailwind has a bunch of width classes to define how long these are going to be. And one of these, or one part of this that Tailwind has, is a grid system. Grid systems have been around long before web development, long before magazines. It's like part of a book. What's the right word? I'm drawing a total blank. When you lay out a book and you get the right spacing between things. I don't know why I'm not thinking of the right word, but you get the idea. So grid systems came along with that, and they are usually a standard kind of system that you can use. And the one that Tailwind has is a 12 unit grid. So that means that it gives you tools to cluster things together on sizes that fit into 12. And what history has found and what people are used to is that this grid layout just gives a lot of structure to a page so that you know what's going on. So we're going to use some of this grid stuff and fit things in there. So I'm going to try giving each of the courses a width of 212, 2 out of the 12 spaces, and see what happens. So we've got our flex row, and we can say width of 2 out of 12. And yes, I know that's the same as 1/6, but I'm doing it because I want to think in units of 12, not because I can't do math. Okay, that didn't seem to affect anything. So clearly something is up. So we need to find more stuff on Flex. There's things you can tell Flex to do, like what to do about wrapping. Looks like we want to use Flex wrap, I think. And that was added to the actual Flex container. So here's what he's showing. I say he because the person who makes this primarily happens to be a he. And in this example, it's showing a box that fits into like 5 units, and there's 2/5, 2/5, 2/5, and so the third one doesn't have enough room, so it flows over to the next area. So we need the same. because I think that's exactly the behavior that I want. I want these ultimately to be like little cards that just sort of fit together on the site, and I think that'll do the right thing. Okay, we still can't really tell because they're not given a unique height or size. They still kind of look a little weird, and I also feel like the 212 is going to be way too small. Like I didn't really think this through. Clearly, that is intended to put 6 courses on a single line, and that's not what I want. I want probably 4, maybe even 3. So let's change this to 312 to try that out, and we can see how that looks. And I'm still trying to imagine this because there's also going to be this extra chrome around it. So this thing will be like a card. In fact, I think there's a card example that I can kind of show you a little bit of what I'm thinking about. I'm not going to include pictures, but it could be something a little bit like this. Like we would change this to be the name of the class, put little bits of information about the class, like what days it runs on down here, put the button to edit right there, and that could be the card. So I think these will be like shorter than this, but that feels like about the right amount of space. And these cards are going to be like mini cards. They're not going to be big gigantic things. So that's what I'm imagining will go here. So I'll operate on the assumption that we'll use this 3 size for now, and if it really just doesn't fit, then I'll blow it up to I said that backwards. Operating on the 3 out of 12 is what I meant. But if it just isn't going to fit, we'll bump it up to 4 out of 12 to make it so that 3 courses appear per row. And I think that should be about right. But I think, what do I think? Maybe that's a good place to stop, because I've been going on for an hour and a half, and that's a lot. So we've been working on a single page. Hopefully you learned a little bit about Django in this process, how to use server-side templates to your advantage, a little bit about some code and logic, and all of these things that come along the path. On the next stream, I'm going to continue working on this stuff offline, so you may actually just see me like jump straight to the end of how did these things end up turning out. There will still be plenty to do though. As you saw from this milestone, I've got a bunch of pages that I need to build, and we didn't even finish a single page tonight. Now some of these will be simpler pages. This page is oh, you're welcome, Gubsboy. Well, thanks for joining in. So this page is the most complex of the bunch because it will be like home base for the planning mode that I was talking about. So it's important to get the details right here, but there's still a ton to do. So next time we'll probably flesh out more of this stuff. We'll write some tests. We'll do some other things, but that's for a different time. So thank you all for joining in. Again, I post this content on YouTube. If you want to subscribe there, if you want to catch up on something you might have missed here, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm MB Lehman. If you really found it valuable, I'm on Patreon as MB Lehman as well. And that would be awesome. But yeah, thank you so much for joining in, and take care.